Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I invite you to close your eyes, let your mind wander, and drift slowly into the calm embrace of sleep, while I take you on a very long and rather uneventful journey through one of the many tales of Greek mythology. This is the story of Apollo, a god whose life was filled with music, light, prophecy, and rather repetitive encounters with love, rivalries, and endless divine tasks. But instead of rushing through it, we shall move gently and slowly, pausing at every step so the story becomes a lullaby, stretching across time, lulling you into relaxation as much as it informs you. Apollo, the son of Zeus, king of the gods, and Leto, a goddess of the Titans, was not born easily. His birth itself is long enough to begin to send your mind into drowsiness. You see, Leto wandered across the world, searching for a place to give birth to her children, because Hera, the jealous wife of Zeus, had made it nearly impossible for her to find shelter. Island after island refused her, land after land turned her away, until she finally found the tiny, floating island of Delos. It was not a grand island, not a famous one, but it welcomed her. There, under the shade of a palm tree, Leto gave birth first to Artemis, the twin sister, who would later become goddess of the hunt and the moon, and then to Apollo, radiant god of light, of poetry, of healing, and of so many other things. Already, even as a baby, he shone with a kind of brilliance that would mark his place among the Olympians. As Apollo grew, his life became filled with many events, some dramatic and others almost amusing in their repetitiveness. His first great challenge was not about love or music, but about monsters. The region around Delphi was plagued by a terrible serpent known as Python. This creature had haunted his mother, chasing her endlessly during her pregnancy. Apollo, determined to protect his mother and secure his place, took up his bow and arrows, weapons that would forever define him, and he slew Python. From then on, Delphi became sacred to Apollo. The site became the home of the Oracle of Delphi, where priestesses known as the Pythia would sit upon a tripod, breathe in the vapors of the earth, and speak the prophecies of Apollo, words often mysterious and winding, yet guiding kings and common folk alike. Apollo, you must understand, was a god of many talents. Unlike some other Olympians who focused on one realm, Apollo was scattered across so many domains that it almost becomes tedious to list them. He was the god of light, though not quite the sun itself, for Helios had once driven the chariot of the sun across the sky. Yet in time, Apollo absorbed this role, becoming associated with the daily rising and setting of the sun. He was also the god of music, playing the lyre so sweetly that even the hearts of the immortals softened at his melodies. He was the god of prophecy, guiding mortals through visions of what was to come, though often in riddles. He was a god of healing and of medicine, though also a god who could bring sudden plague with a shot of his silver arrows. He was tied to order, to harmony, to rationality, yet like all the Olympians, he could be rash, emotional, and often overcome by passions that led him into missteps. Now, Apollo's story is filled with many loves, most of which ended badly, not because he was cruel, but because fate or chance often placed barriers in his way. Consider his pursuit of Daphne, the nymph. Struck by one of Eros's mischievous arrows, Apollo fell hopelessly in love with Daphne. Yet Eros had also struck Daphne with a different arrow, one that caused aversion and rejection. So, as Apollo chased after her, desperate to hold her, Daphne fled. Her only escape was to pray to her father, the river god Peneus, to save her. He transformed her into a laurel tree, her limbs hardening, her hair turning into leaves. Apollo, arriving too late, could do nothing but honor her. He declared that the laurel would be his sacred tree, a crown of its leaves forever adorning poets, victors, and himself. And so, a love story that might have bloomed ended instead in stillness, in bark and leaves, in a reminder of yearning unfulfilled. Another tale tells of Apollo's love for Hyacinthus, a beautiful youth of Sparta. They spent their days together, playing sports, competing in games, and enjoying the radiant presence of one another. Yet fate was cruel. During a game of discus, the wind or perhaps the jealousy of another god turned the discus into a weapon. It struck Hyacinthus on the head, and he fell, dying in Apollo's arms. The god, filled with sorrow, could not revive him. Instead, from the youth's spilled blood, Apollo caused a flower to grow, the hyacinth, bearing the memory of his beloved. Once again, love turned into mourning, and beauty turned into a symbol of loss. Then there was Coronis, a mortal woman loved by Apollo. Yet she betrayed him, or at least her heart strayed to another man. When Apollo discovered this, his anger was sharp, and Coronis was struck down. Yet even in his grief and regret, he saved the unborn child she carried. That child was Asclepius, who would grow to become the greatest healer of all time, a mortal who challenged even death, and who was eventually set among the stars as a god of medicine. Apollo's interactions were not only with lovers but also with rivals. He once challenged Marsyas, a satyr who believed himself to be a great musician. Marsyas had found a flute once played by the goddess Athena and had become skillful. But Apollo, with his lyre, challenged him to a contest. They played, and though Marsyas played well, Apollo outwitted him by demanding they play while singing upside down. Marsyas could not, and Apollo, in his divine arrogance, punished him harshly. He flayed Marsyas alive, a grim ending to a contest of music. Even gods of beauty and light could act with cruelty when their pride was touched. Another rivalry was with Niobe, a queen of Thebes who mocked Leto, Apollo's mother, for having only 2 children, while she boasted of her many. In anger, Apollo and Artemis struck down all of Niobe's children, leaving her weeping until she turned into stone, her tears flowing forever as a spring. Once again, Apollo's role as defender of his mother was clear, but the harshness of divine punishment lingered in the memory of mortals. Apollo was also tied to the tale of his son Phaethon, though more often associated with Helios. Phaethon begged to drive the chariot of the sun, but he lost control, scorching the earth, creating deserts, and endangering all life. Zeus struck him down with a thunderbolt, and his body fell into a river. Apollo mourned, but the lesson was one of hubris, of a mortal reaching too far for a task too great. Throughout these myths, Apollo remains radiant yet complicated. He was a bringer of order, of rational thought, of balance. His temple at Delphi bore the words, "Know thyself," a reminder of humility, and, "Nothing in excess," a warning against extremes. Mortals sought him for guidance, kings traveled far to hear his oracles, and his music brought peace and harmony. Yet, as we have seen, he was also capable of jealousy, of anger, of rash decisions that caused suffering. He embodied both light and shadow, the clarity of day and the unpredictable blaze of the sun. One might grow tired listening to every single episode, because they all follow a pattern, do they not? Apollo loves, but love slips away. Apollo competes, but victory comes with cruelty. Apollo gives, but his gifts carry burdens. And yet, perhaps that very repetition is what makes his story so fitting for a tale told at night, as the mind drifts into patterns and cycles, familiar and slow. As time passed, Apollo's image blended with other deities. He became not only the god of prophecy and music but also of civilization itself, a figure of reason and enlightenment. When the Romans adopted him, they honored him as one of the few Greek gods to retain his name unchanged, showing his universality. His temple stood tall, his cult spread across lands, and his presence lingered in poetry, in songs, in philosophy. And so, we move through Apollo's life, from his miraculous birth on Delos, through his slaying of Python, through his loves and losses, his rivalries and victories, his temples and prophecies, until at last he stands not as a figure of endless drama but as a symbol. He is light and harmony, beauty and reason, but also yearning and imperfection. His myths may seem long, sometimes repetitive, sometimes cruel, sometimes tender, but like the steady rising of the sun, they continue, cycle after cycle, as if to lull the human mind into calm acceptance of life's patterns. And as you think of Apollo now, shining but distant, radiant but flawed, let the rhythm of his story fade into the background. Let it become a gentle hum, a steady warmth like sunlight across your eyelids, a music of the lyre playing softly in your imagination. Because though the myths are endless, though they turn again and again, they are not meant to excite you but to settle you, to remind you that even gods live in loops of longing, triumph, and regret. And with that thought, we bring this long and wandering story to its end, so that you may close your eyes fully and drift into your own dreams, where Apollo's light will fade into the darkness of night, and peace will take its place.